Okay, here we are in Pax still. Rolled the random events, got an unrest table A event, which means that Belgium is going to get double colonial office money. They'll probably just end up banking it into victory points. It doesn't feel like they can do much in this game. If they could get a valuable territory, that's great, but for the most part, trying to grab a 5-point territory at this point, which is probably what they can get their hands on, doesn't help. The actual unrest was in Somalia. That has no effect at all on play because it's already a disorganized area. Anybody can go in and fight it anyhow. Unrest matters when somebody's present in the area because they have to defeat the natives again. It matters when you're hitting one of these organized areas or internal China because it means you can march in and take control. Beyond that, well, we got the administrative stuff to take care of. It's going to be kind of a bitch. I think I'm going to have to recount everything. As is always the case at some point in the game, the miners start getting themselves into unimportant issues only. So, the Netherlands went into Sarawak. At some point, that might be worth somebody investing in. But it's a 4-point area. The Netherlands has largely been investing in unimportant areas, but they're out of counters. They can't just grab it anymore. And likewise with Portugal and Southwest Africa, they can't do anything. So they're not even really restricting anyone else. Nobody really wants to take those areas in general, but they might be places where an investment or something is worth putting because you make money off of them. Even if you do it on the last turn, it costs you $5 to drop an investment in a place like this. But with 3-point value, at the end of the game, it brings in $6. So you make a you make a $1 off of things, and then you get your divisor based on that. So you make a little bit of points off of them potentially. The other thing is money's not worth anything except victory points. I mean, if you invested in victory points right at the beginning. But the danger, of course, with interest and influence is they can be chased away. But nobody's going to go put a protectorate in there. That's just too much money. No matter who you are, really. Putting that in there would cost you, $20 to drop a protectorate in there, plus the military challenge. And the victory point value of it is 12. There's a point where, unless you're getting something like the North-South Path or something like that, which you might get here. This is a desirable location for the North-South Path. But unless you've got something like that going for you, there's no real point. Shit, I caught myself cheating a couple of places. One was a little earlier. I had the Japanese move into here, or actually up into here, which they couldn't do as though they owned this or as though there was a sea area connected. They didn't have that. I fixed that right away. Now I see the U.S. went in here. I've got them in the South Atlantic. I always forget this, that the Caribbean doesn't connect to the South Atlantic. It only connects to the North Atlantic. I don't really have a way of fixing that. The only thing I could do to fix that is to say, they couldn't get there. They would have gone for this crappy Mauritania or something. What I can do, I can do this. I can put them in Hawaii instead. And that's probably a little more reasonable. The reason they went there was, hey, they wanted to grab something that was kind of valuable, that other people could get to easily. But they couldn't get there. They can get to Hawaii off the North Pacific Exchange. I don't know what to do with this fleet now. I've got a spare fleet. Probably cutting down here into the South America. Or else, even more valuable up in North China. So we'll probably do some expansion up there instead. This turn is opening up kind of the way I used to first play the game. People are just kind of grabbing things and laying their markers down. But they're holding on to enough money to build up a significant navy or whatever in case somebody steps in to block what they want. But you've got like Germany jumping here into Cameroon, the English grabbing Rhodesia. Try to get control so that they can be pretty sure that they're going to control the north-south route. They're probably going to go into Uganda next. The danger there, they probably have to take Sudan too and just close it off right now. That's their big goal. They get a lot of points for that. The English are kind of feathering their nest. The big buildup of navies that happened, especially for France, has kind of put them a little shy. They know that bad things can happen if they end up in a conflict at this kind of stage in the game. At the early stage, they have the bigger navy, significantly bigger. If they're getting stripped away as they are at this point, it becomes a little bit scarier for them. And other people kind of realize that. They realize, hey, I'm Germany. Between me and France, we can outbuy the Brits, and we currently have as big a navy. Somebody like Italy probably doesn't have that much muscle to flex. But it's an interesting situation. And it's just kind of developing that way. Remember, I rolled the dice to see who kind of takes the next turn, just to simulate that, the delaying tactics and how they actually play out in a solo sort of way. Well, the naval race of last turn has turned ugly. The French have built a couple more navies. The English had to build one or two more. They're basically a parity at this point, France and England. France built an additional one over England. They had some additional income. England's been able, I think, to shift, though, and maybe set themselves up so they have better income for next turn. What it did result in, though, with that kind of parity was some sort of deal over here in the Sudan. We have one problem, though. The French, especially with their current might, basically told the Japanese, no, you can't get that close to Indochina. Sorry, you just can't have that. And Japan's going to have to back down on that. I've got some rolls to make for some of the establishments. Germany's getting scary, and there might be a English-French agreement as regards Germany at this point, because they've swept through here and cut a number of spaces over here. Basically, when that kind of agreement happens, it ends up saying, no, you can't expand anymore, period. You try to do it somewhere, we slap something down, an influence or whatever, and you know you're going to war against a lot more power than you can face. And it just kind of totally handcuffs a power. The only way around it is if you can get a separation between, say, France and Britain. And in this game, the way it's developing, it looks like France and Britain are going to cooperate. Britain's going to get the north-south route, assuming they get Baluchistan. They have the rest of it built. And France is intending on cutting across the east-west path. And England is okay with that. Danger possibly. Germany could slip in there into Chad. But for the most part, nobody can do anything. But definitely a couple of powers have gotten some advantages. The Japanese were expanding rapidly in China. That's why France said no to them. England was unwilling to support France in that, but they also are unwilling to jump in on Japan's side. Japan's starting to build up their own navy. Germany gave up on that. They looked and said it ain't worth it. Japan probably should have done the same. The one thing it does is it gives them some strength against countries like Germany or Russia. Once the navies get to this kind of size that you see for England and France, and those are mainly 10-point navies, it's pretty hard for even a coalition to go against them. The only thing, and it's hard for some of these other powers to really be the swaying force between them. They've both invested so much that it would take a significant sized navy to be able to swing that balance in any degree. Last time, Italy was enough to kind of swing the balance in France's favor so that a deal was made and Britain backed down. Well, an Italy 10-point navy probably isn't enough. It might be enough to even the matters and cause a peace like it was last time. But those other countries, they really aren't big enough to play in the big boys realm. Well, no need for a conference this turn. Like I said, England and France worked out their differences. Japan had to pull theirs out of here. That raised tensions a little bit. Chinese resistance is up to about 8, which means we should be searching for another die. Yeah, I don't have any more of these tiny ones. I like them. The tiny rounded ones. That's not going to go. So, China's okay for now. And China's kind of at the point, so one of the things with the game is people want to topple China into the situation where they revolt, because then you beat them up, and it's pretty easy to beat them up. In fact, it's almost impossible to lose the Chinese war because they can't get to Formosa, and as long as somebody's got troops there, the war will continue so people can bring things around. But possessions, influence, interest, that can all get ripped up through the war. The one thing that can happen, though, is that the winners can all demand territory from the war. But once the U.S. gets involved, which happens as soon as they have an influence marker here, well, if they can get troops into the war and end it and be involved in the final situation, they can demand the open door policy, which they get victory points for, and it's pretty hard to convince them to split China up. The other thing is, if China does get split up, it'll keep rolling around, and you'll be able to pretty much dismantle China over the period of the game. I think we're done, to tell you the truth. After there's no wars, there's no Congress of Europe, Chinese resentment's done. We're just going to score some victory points, and people have saved them up. For example, the Americans saved 12. Oh, I forgot to mention, they built the canal. Now, that was kind of a cheap thing. It shouldn't have happened that early, but because of the repositioning and screw-ups, and I found some more influence markers down here, I moved them up there. It sort of sucks for England, because England would like the canal, but they've been kind of busy, so I let it fly that way. So they got 15 victory points for that. It cost them $30 to build. $30 divided by 4, their divisor, would give them about 8 victory points, so that even the U.S. gets a bonus off of it. Pretty much any of power bigger than them is going to get a bonus. Well, actually, any power gets a bonus. It's just the 2-point power, Italy, wouldn't, but they can prevent other people from getting it. So we're going to see, I'll come back after I score the total points, but we're going to see the Americans get like 3 victory points. They have 12 in here. The Brits don't have any. Germans are collecting up a pile. They have 30 Austrian money they can't do anything with, so that's going to be 6 victory points. Belgium is pulling in 60 victory points. They got nothing to use their money for, and they got a divisor of 1. They're just going to sit there, and they become sort of the baseline that everybody's got to beat, and I think that's going to be just about impossible. All right. I forgot negotiations. Given the peaceful nature, Russia and France signed a treaty, and then Germany and France signed a treaty. Nobody else is going to do it. Everybody else is just giving points to sign treaties. In the case of Germany, they feel like they have to give France the points in the event, because France is getting points in conjunction with Russia. So as long as the Russian-French alliance is going, and there's no reason not to, Germany's going to give its alliance as well. So yeah, Belgium, if we take a look at the chart, is way in the lead with 85 victory points. The U.S. is next with 20, and down to -4 for the Brits. Now, of course, Belgium is going to get no end-of-game victory points. I've always been kind of curious about this game with countries like Germany or maybe some of the weaker powers. Hey, can they just win by stocking aside their victory points? Well, there's no one better to find that out with than Belgium, who gets a 1-point divisor. And, you know, they're able to put themselves in a couple of places where they're going to get some good money. They get that big colonial office, roll of a 6 every turn. That's only $15 for them, but still, that's as good as, say, the Italy under the traditional game with, you know, pulling in, what do they get? $30 with a 2 divisor. You spread out some of those interests and influences, you can pull a good deal of money in. Italy can probably do even better with that. It's kind of neat to have that baseline in place. I would say Belgium's no fun to play, though. You know, you're not going to even get the Congo, which they get as a neutral. In fact, playing the game with the 3 weaker powers, Italy, Russia, and Japan as neutrals, puts a little bit of pressure, because those neutrals, when they are active, and these guys are active fairly often, they're going to grab stuff that you can't touch. So it's possible that Italy will Italy will get Egypt on turn 1 and bang, it's just gone from the game. Usually that's something that requires tremendous negotiation and diplomacy. For Belgium to get away with the Congo in the actual game, I can't see how they can do it. They just don't have the military force to be a factor in the game. So that's where we stand, and I guess we're pushing into the 1892 turn. I'll load this one up.